terror at the Olympic Village. Snow fell like ash over the Olympic Village, softening the angles of glass and steel into something almost gentle. Inside, the athletes slept, some dreaming of podiums, others of home, while the flags outside cracked and snapped in the wind like nervous tongues. The first scream came at 2:17 a.m. It threaded through the corridors of Building C, thin and frantic, then cut off with a wet finality. Security would later say the storm delayed their response. They would say radios failed, that cameras iced over. They would say so many things. The killer moved with a skater's grace. He wore a parka indistinguishable from the volunteers. Blue, white, the 5 rings stitched over his heart. He had learned the rhythms of the village the way the athletes learn courses, the quiet hours, the blind spots, the doors that stuck. He smelled of cold and metal. In his pocket, the blade steamed faintly. By morning, the village buzzed with rumors, each more grotesque than the last. An alpine skier found with her throat opened like a metal ribbon. A bobsledder slumped in a stairwell, eyes frozen wide. Blood feathered across the concrete. The official line called it an incident. The village director insisted events would continue. They always continued. Maria watched the snow fall from her balcony, fingers numb around a mug gone cold. She was a biathlete, ski and rifle, and she knew what quiet felt like when it turned predatory. The village had that feeling now. Doors closed too softly. Footsteps echoed too long. She heard the knock just after dusk. "Maria?" a voice called. Friendly, breathless. "Volunteer check." She didn't open the door. She watched the peephole instead, heart ticking. The hallway lights flickered. The figure outside shifted, impatient. When she didn't answer, the handle rattled. Once, twice. Then the hallway felt silent. She waited an hour before moving. The next day, the flags were lowered halfway. A press conference announced a suspect. The village exhaled, relieved. Maria didn't. She saw the way fear lingered like frost, hardening everything it touched. That night, she followed the footprints. They led from a service stairwell toward the maintenance tunnels, veins beneath the village, warm and humming. She had trained for endurance, for pain. She had trained to aim while her lungs burned. She carried her rifle wrapped in a towel, absurd and heavy. The tunnels smelled of oil and old snow. The lights buzzed. Ahead, someone hummed an anthem off-key. She rounded a corner and saw him. The parka, the rings. His hands were red to the wrists. He smiled when he saw her, a smile practiced in mirrors. "You're late," he said. Everyone else came so easily. He lunged. The rifle cracked like thunder. The shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him into the wall. He laughed even then, a sound like breaking ice. "You don't get it," he said, sliding down. "This place is a stage. They'll never stop the show." Sirens bloomed above them, distant and growing. He looked past her, eyes alit. "There are others," he said. "Always others." When they dragged him out, the village cheered. Fireworks stitched the sky for a medal ceremony, colors blooming against the dark. Maria stood alone on her balcony as snow erased the footprints below. She watched the lights and listened to the applause and wondered how many shadows still wore the rings, waiting for the next quiet hour. Poison in the village. Under the ice, the poison spreads. The first athlete collapsed during breakfast. It was quiet, too quiet for the Olympic Village dining hall at dawn. Snow pressed against the glass walls like a held breath. Nordic skiers sat wrapped in team jackets, steam rising from bowls of oatmeal and mugs of tea. When the Russian biathlete fell forward, face striking the tray with a dull crack, everyone assumed it was exhaustion, altitude sickness, nerves. They were wrong. By nightfall, 3 more were dead. The official statement called it an acute viral event. The bodies were removed discreetly, zipped into bags before cameras could catch more than a glimpse. Training schedules continued. Medals were still expected. The games could not pause for tragedy. But something was wrong with the food. Lena Kovacs noticed at first because she cooked it. She was a night shift kitchen aide, contracted through a catering company no one bothered to learn the name of. Invisible work for invisible people. She chopped vegetables, scrubbed pans, and watched athletes with godlike bodies devour calories like fuel. That morning, while washing ladles, she noticed a faint, bitter almond smell clinging to the tea urn. Just for a second, gone when she leaned closer. The next day, a Canadian speed skater convulsed in the snow outside the dormitories, foam freezing at the corner of his mouth before medics arrived. They sealed off the village. Security checkpoints multiplied. Hazmat teams inspected water lines, kitchens, storage rooms. Nothing. No pathogens. No sabotage. The deaths continued. Slow, deliberate, spaced just far enough apart to avoid panic, close enough to feel intentional. At night, Lena began to dream of frost creeping up her legs, veins blackening beneath her skin. She started watching people. The coaches were frantic. The doctors looked hunted. The volunteers were exhausted. But one man never changed. Emil Hartman, logistics supervisor for food distribution. Always calm, always smiling. His credentials opened every door. He drank tea constantly, refilling his cup from the same urns he monitored. Lena followed him one night. She muffled her footsteps as Emil crossed between buildings, breath clouding the air. He entered a service corridor behind the main dining hall. Lena slipped in after him, heart hammering. She watched from behind a stack of crates as he removed a small vial from his coat. Clear liquid, no smell. He tipped a single drop into a container of electrolyte mix, stirring once, then capping the vial and smiled to himself. Her phone slipped from her glove. The sound echoed. Emil turned. They stared at each other, the hum of refrigeration units filling the space between them. He didn't run. He didn't shout. "You shouldn't be here," he said gently. She ran anyway. Lena burst into the snow, screaming, waving her arms at a passing security patrol. They tackled Emil minutes later. The vial was confiscated. The games were suspended. Headlines screamed about terror, betrayal, chemical warfare. But the deaths didn't stop. 2 more athletes collapsed the following morning. Then 3. The investigators were baffled. Emil's vial contained a rare toxin, slow-acting, undetectable in trace amounts, fatal after repeated exposure. But he couldn't have been the only one. The dosage patterns didn't match. Someone else was poisoning them. From her hospital bed, Lena watched the news in horror. Then she noticed something. A nurse adjusted her IV and smiled. That same calm smile Emil had worn. Later, Lena overheard 2 doctors whispering, different accents, same phrasing. The body is a system, one said. Systems can be optimized. That night, Lena understood. It wasn't one person. It was a belief. A quiet shared conviction moving through kitchens, clinics, supply chains. People who thought the games were a lie. That the world worshipped perfect bodies while rotting underneath. They weren't killing athletes out of hatred. They were conducting an experiment. As snow fell softly outside, Lena tasted bitterness in her mouth and realized, too late, that she had been part of the system all along.